listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host. I'm your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight from our broadcast center here in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and around the world on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Radio X throughout Europe, the Mutual Broadcast Network, and the Talkstar Radio Network. Worldwide toll-free, 800-610-7035. Email X-Zone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can listen to the X-Zone live, Monday through Friday, or the rest of the clock, the rest of the 24-hour clock, 24/7, 365 with the best of at www.xzoneradiotv.com. X-Zone Nation, my guest tonight is Bridget Saraka. She is a feng shui expert and intuitive practitioner specializing in on-site and distance space cleaning, personal clearing, and dowsing. Currently residing in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Bridget assists clients across the globe. Her website, www.fengshuibybridget.com. And Bridget, welcome, fellow Canadian. How are you tonight?
I am wonderful. Thank you, and thank you for having me.
It's a great pleasure having you. Feng Shui is becoming more and more and more popular. But for our listeners around the world who may not have heard, or they've heard of Feng Shui, but they really don't know what it is, how would you, as one of Feng Shui's leading experts, describe it?
Well, Feng Shui is the study of how our environment supports and enhances our health and well-being. So it either positively influences it or it can negatively influence. And my job is to identify those areas that are not benefiting us and creating an environment that does support us.
How did you get started in Feng Shui?
Well, I grew up with an awareness of Feng Shui. My grandfather really lived with an awareness of the environment and supporting. So it was something that came very natural in my upbringing. And my mother would kind of drop the word around. I guess it was dependent on what book she was reading at the time. So it was kind of loosely in the ethers when I was in my youth. And in Ontario, I kind of had a awakening in my life. I think we all do kind of have those dark night of the soul, those life experiences that kind of impact us and put us on another road. And it was that life-changing experience that really opened up the whole metaphysical world in a greater, deeper level for me. And through that, I did some self-study on Feng Shui, and it wasn't until 2009 that I decided, if I'm going to do this as a career, I'm going to take some really good studying and not just read a book and think I know what I'm doing, to actually study with some fantastic people and implement the changes that I was seeing. Now, through reading books, I was able to implement things for myself and my family and notice some really profound changes. But with my background in metaphysical and in Ontario, because I'm from Ontario originally, I had a background in building houses and interior decorating, so the Feng Shui really blended my metaphysical life with my material life, and I'm air quoting as I'm saying that. So it was a real good fit for me to incorporate everything that I have and I didn't have to go through life segmenting myself any longer.
We've got about a minute before I have to take our first break. Why do you think in today's society, the year 2016, that feng shui is becoming so popular here in the West?
I think it's really making mainstream thanks to yoga, meditation. There's a lot more the power of attraction. People are becoming more aware of their ability to manifest,
Right.
and in that, realizing that their environment does impact how they feel, their health, their moods, and how you create an environment to support that you are it's much more powerful to manifest when your environment is supporting the things that you're putting out in your meditation. It's
All right.
the anchor points.
The anchor points. I like that. Bridget, stand by. You and I have to take our first break. We'll be back on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break, Exo Nation. My guest this hour is Bridget Saraka, and we're talking about feng shui, amongst other things. If you'd like to visit Bridget's website, learn more about feng shui, or contact Bridget. Her website is www.fengshuibybridget.com. The X Zone, a place where people dare to believe, dare to be heard around the world now. And Bridget and I will be back as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back. Bridget Saraka is our special guest this hour. www.fengshuibybridget.com. Since your chosen career is a little out of the box, do you find that even in today's society there are times when feng shui and other not so well known practices are met with resistance within the communities?
I have found that, yes. I'd have to answer that absolutely with a yes. I find that people are become more accepting of the metaphysical modalities, as I stated before the break, but there is some resistance, yes. And I think it's based in, number one, rooted in fear of the unknown. And I think, and if I dare say, I think some of the deeper-rooted religious beliefs place a lot of judgment on the metaphysical things, which I kind of find contradictory, because I think there's, as you and I talked about in the break, that there's some complementary, that there is metaphysical in a lot of the religions too, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, there is some resistance, but I always look at it as an opportunity to educate. I will not debate, but I will, if the opportunity is there to have a conversation where someone's actually interested, I'm happy to share, but I'm not about to get into any kind of debate with. Well,
why don't you share with us the beginnings of feng shui and how it started in the East and ended up over here in the West, and a bit of what people can benefit from when bringing in a professional practitioner like yourself into their home or their office to use your talents, use your skills to make wherever they are living or working a better place.
Well, thanks for that. So feng shui originated in China. It's about 5,000 years old. I mean, some people will say 5,000, 4,000 years. And then when you're looking at an ancient modality, those timelines can be a little blurred in lines based on the lineage and the verbal communication of that. So around 5,000 years old. It was generally used by the emperors to find the most auspicious placement to build their their homes, their villages, and they wanted to be where the vegetation was really good. So they were really looking at the earth. Was it rich? Was the vegetation thriving? Because if the vegetation could thrive, so could the people. They wanted the shelter from the mountainous regions, the trees, the forests, so that they weren't bombarded by, the onslaught of heavy-duty winds and stuff that would, blow the roofs off their homes and et cetera. And then they wanted to be close enough where there's a water source, so that as long as there was nice, healthy water, then everyone's going to thrive and survive. And then what happened is, well, there's different schools of feng shui. So the original school, which is the 5,000 years old, is called form school feng shui. And that's where you're really looking in and around the environment and how it's supporting you, and then creating your structure to support you further. And then about 3,000 years from there, when people were moving out of their mountainous regions, they moved down to more the flatlands, and that's when compass school or classical or traditional feng shui came in. Classical, traditional, and what they're looking at in the compass school is that they're looking based on direction from a compass and looking at the astrology. So what they were doing is saying that necessarily they would try to choose to build facing the south because that's where the sun came up, and then put the bedrooms at the back where the sun goes down. That's really popular still in Asia, and it's actually really popular in Canadian West Coast and East Coast, where we have more of an Asian population because it's more accepted now. However, for myself, we can't always determine the direction of our homes. Right?
True.
I'm not going to necessarily, and based on astrology. So my husband's astrology is different than my astrology, and of course it's Eastern astrology, not Western astrology or Ayurvedic astrology. So, and it's based on a 7-year cycle. And then there's, I follow a combination of form school with BTB, which is Black Hat Feng Shui, and that was brought to the U.S. actually about 45 years ago from Professor Lin Young, who brought in some traditional form school. So he brought form school and then Taoism and Bon religious aspects. So he does a lot of metaphysical, transcendental remedies. So when you hear anything to do with the red string, or sequences of 3, 6, 9s or 12s, then you're looking at more the Black Hat Feng Shui. So I do a combination of form with BTB, and then I branded my own called Hybrid Feng Shui because I bring in all of my other metaphysical tools into every consultation. So I'll adapt and bring in the dowsing, because what I'm doing with the dowsing is I want to look at the non-beneficial earth frequencies, being geopathic stress, which is the underground water currents, either man-made or natural, that are causing a magnetic charge in the environment that could be compromising somebody's health and well-being, so compromising their magnetic system. So I look and I bring in, with my space clearing and all of my other healing modalities into every consultation, as well as my background in interior decorating.
I remember having a Joseph Yu on the show many years ago.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I found it fascinating because, he was talking about mirrors. He was talking about the color red, and then there were coins in water and why there's fish in people keep fish in tanks. And one thing that made sense to me was that as you were talking about the basic foundations of feng shui so many years ago, it seemed that there was a lot of common sense that was put into the locations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we live in harmony with nature, we're going to be more supported. And where we are now, I mean, there's a lot of more consciousness moving towards the environment and, sustaining it so that it sustains us back and forth. But up until the last 10, 15 years, there wasn't a whole lot of respect. And actually Canada, if I am so bold to say so, Canada's even behind other countries in regards to that, right? But when we do live in harmony with nature and really pay attention to where is my home in relationship to in the neighborhood? Am I too close to a river? Am I close to a railroad track? Am I close to a hospital? All those things do affect us. So it's about really being mindful. Am I living, is a freeway right behind me? Because that fast-moving traffic is going to deplete the energy of my neighborhood, which is therefore going to deplete my personal energy and my family's energy. So I would choose my location.
What about
properly.
what is the significance of placing mirrors in the house, as well as the different colors that feng shui seem to favor for what I remember of being very good reasons?
Yeah, well, mirrors can be used to either. Mirrors are really fascinating because they can raise the energy if placed in a really wise way. So being really mindful how you use a mirror. So, for instance, if there was a dark room, I would use a mirror close to a window to give the place a feeling of more expansiveness, and then reflect more light into the room, which is going to raise the vibration. Because I look at it like we're like plants. If there's not enough light in the room, the plant's going to die. If there's not enough light in the room, our frequency is going to drop, and we're going to become depressed and sick eventually. So placing it to give it the feeling of expansion or raise the energy. You can also be used to reflect energy back. So, for instance, if I was living... Well, I do. I live on a T intersection, which is, from most feng shui standards, is a no-no, and I'm air quoting as I say that. The thing is, though, what T intersection are you living on? There's a cul-de-sac in front of us. I was able to adjust my landscape, and then I could use a bagua mirror, which is a little round mirror in an octagon, over my door to send the energy back. So it's about reflecting non-beneficial energy that could be causing some less than excellent effects to our property. Or I can use it to expand a space or redirect the space. The thing with mirrors is you want to be really careful, because whatever's in the mirror will duplicate. So you don't necessarily want to hang a mirror across from the door, because it might bounce the energy back out the door. You don't want necessarily a mirror across from, a messy sink or a messy bathroom, that the door is wide open, right? So you have to be careful with that. Mirrors in the bedroom will reflect what's going on in the bedroom. So when you're sleeping, your energy is, supposed to be resting, but the mirror can activate things. So a lot of people with mirrors in the bedroom cannot sleep properly. And I was in one place. It was interesting because they had two closets, a he and a her, a Jack and Jill closet. 2 sliding mirror doors on that, and then the dresser with the 4-foot mirror on, and then they had a big flat screen TV. Well, all those mirrors was duplicating the energy in the room, plus all the electronics in the room. It was increasing the electromagnetics in the room.
Right.
So they were not sleeping. So what we did is we took the mirror off the dresser, put a piece of artwork that was more peaceful for them, so that when they were sleeping, and was right across from the bed too, right? So on the female side of the bed, there was the closet doors. At the foot of the bed was the mirror, and then on the male side of the bed was the TV. So we had all this energy just bouncing around.
Oh my goodness!
So we took the TV out of the bedroom, took the mirror off the dresser, and then hung curtains over the closets, the closet mirrors, and then they just could open them during the day because I want that light to reflect. And of course, the bedroom was at the north side of the house, so it didn't get a lot of light. So the mirrors actually helped to raise that. But closing the curtains on the mirrored doors at bedtime, they both slept better, and their relationship shifted in a more positive dynamics.
How about the amount of electromagnetic frequencies that we are all inundated with these days, whether it's the microwave cell towers or whether it's the wireless router in the house that feeds our multiple devices, the wireless phone that we all have in the bedroom, and then, of course, like you said, TVs in the bedroom. I've never understood that myself, because you go to the bedroom to sleep, and if you've got a TV there, it's just going to keep you up. How does all this EMF and all this microwave bombardment that we're faced with each and every day affect us? And I'm going to let you think about that, because I've got to take a commercial break here with the news. Exo Nation, my guest this hour is Bridget Saraka. She is a feng shui expert, intuition practitioner specializing in on-site and distant space cleaning, personal cleaning, and dowsing. Her website is www.fengshuibybridget.com. And Bridget and I will be back on the other side of this news break as we continue here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Something you want to hear? Something special? Do you have a comment? Send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. I'll be back with Bridget. Don't go away.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Feng-shui by Bridget.com is my guest website. Bridget Saraka is our special guest. And once again, her website is feng-shui-by-Bridget.com. And Bridget, before we went to the news break, I was asking you a question about all the EMF and all the microwave energy that we are inundated with each and every day now, whether it be a cell tower, a broadcast tower, the Wi-Fi routers that we have in our homes. How are all these different wireless modern-day wonders really affecting us?
Well, I always look at it that everything is a frequency, and as human beings we have a frequency, and we have the magnetic frequency, and that the non-beneficial, I always call things non-beneficial rather than negative or positive. It's either beneficial or it's non-beneficial. So non-beneficial geopathic stress lines, which I mentioned earlier, which is the underground water currents, they have a magnetic charge as well. Whether it's interference lines from cell phone towers or Hartman and Curry lines being electrical, that the Earth has a natural grid system, and then if something as small as our clock radio that's plugged in can cause that magnetic charge that can kind of spike that frequency, and if we're in that frequency for long periods of time, it can compromise our immune system, increase our anxiety, and then through compromised immune system we become ill, and it usually starts with pain or affects our mood first. So with dowsing, I don't use a gauze meter, I use my dowsing rod. My body, as soon as I tune into a space, I can feel what's happening through my body. And that's something that even as a little kid, I was able to tap into, whether it's electromagnetic frequency or people's emotions. I just have this way of kind of feeling what's going on. So my body will generally know where the geopathic stress line is before my dowsing rod actually guides me to it. But so I will neutralize it with energy. Through my rod, I can identify where the lines are, and then with energy, I neutralize, clear, balance, and transform them. And what happens is a lot of times when I work with clients, I have a pre-questionnaire, and some of it is health, some of it is general lifestyle questions. But with the health questionnaires, most people don't share their chronic conditions because they're living with it every day. It's just, it's meh. It's not something that they're always in their forefront of their mind. So when I'm go in and do the dowsing, my rod will generally, take me to the bedroom, and there'll usually be a line or two across the bed. And I'll ask the client, do you have migraine headaches? Because the rod is showing me that there's a line shooting across the head of one side of the bed or whatever. And the client will go, yeah, absolutely, I have migraines all the time. Or do you have lower limb problems because the line's shooting across the leg, it's coming in on one side on one side of the bed and shooting out on the other side of the bed. So somebody may have lower limb and the other one might have hip or shoulder problem depending on the angle of the line. So then I'll neutralize that line, and then the client will call me, a week or two later and go, oh my God, I feel so amazing. My pain's gone, my anxiety's gone. So even though we can't see those frequencies, they certainly affect us. And it's kind of like the boiled frog. I always liken it to my clients. You know how you're in the bathtub and the water's really, really hot and you notice that? And then within 5 minutes you're adding more hot water because you've now become acclimatized to that.
Right.
We live at these frequencies and we're not aware of the effects on us. And when we have chronic conditions, I'm not saying that this is is a tool to use without addressing any medical expertise, but if you're not getting the answers within your medical field and they're not, you're going there with chronic pain or headache or anxiety, whatever, and your doctor's not able to support you, complementary, the dosing might be able to support you in that. And it's generally, I find it's combination between the non-beneficial frequencies that we're dealing with in geopathic stress, Hartman and Curry, and interference lines, as well as where's the bed placed. Generally, it's the bedroom, right? That's where I'm most concerned about because that's where we spend the longest time. Or somebody like myself, where I work from home, I'd be wanting to know, of course, I want to know what's going on in the place that I work at.
Sure.
But in a bedroom, if your bed is over top of a laundry room or an electrical panel, the odds are you're going to have some disturbances within your magnetic field.
So the electromagnetic fields within our own personal space, as well as our close proximity, can really play havoc on us.
Absolutely. I see it over and over and over again.
What about high tension wires?
Yeah, absolutely. So for myself, I mean, this is as woo-woo, Well, it's probably not as woo-woo as it gets, but it's pretty woo-woo. Really putting up a frequency around the property in order to protect. And dealing with those non-beneficial geopathics, like all those other lines that I talked about first, neutralize those, then put up protection around the property in order to neutralize those lines. I mean, there's devices that you can buy as well that can help with that.
So you're basically looking at putting up a frequency force field in order to dampen the effect of the outside world coming in.
Absolutely. And I always recommend clients to do dowsing quarterly, and I always say, this isn't about getting the gig. This is really about the Earth's frequency shifts, right? If there's an earthquake someplace, those platelets are moving, the geopathic stress lines are shifting. Yeah. They're putting more cell phone towers up in suburbia than they've ever done before, and they're increasing that wattage because more people want service. So what's that doing to us? Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to see if the cell towers are going to be playing more havoc on us because they're increasing the output. What about the cell phone that so many people just whap up to the side of their head and use?
Yeah. Yeah.
When somebody calls you, what is your most frequently asked service? I know you provide a vast array of services, but what is the number one service that you're finding people are calling you up about to help them with?
Actually, space clearing. Space clearing is the number one reason why people call me.
How do you do that? You're in Saskatchewan, and let's say somebody calls you from Dallas, Texas, or I call you from Hamilton, Ontario. How can you help me? How does this work?
Well, I always look at everything's frequency, was what I stated earlier. Yeah. Everything's frequency, so it's a matter of tuning into that frequency and reading the environment. So remote viewing is a term that I like to use. So I remote view the property, I remote view the land, and I also look at what's going on with the clients. Because often what I find the most effective is, number one, doing the dosing first and foremost, because you're neutralizing those earth energies or those electromagnetic frequencies that the non-beneficial energy forms or entities can be stuck in. So you neutralize the earth stuff or the man-made stuff, and then you can address more of the esoteric, the non-beneficial energy forms or entities within the space. And I find a lot of times that those non-beneficial entities or energies are also kind of feeding off the auric field of the individuals. So then you're clearing the client as well as clearing the space. So what I'm doing it remotely is I'm just tuning into the frequency, getting a read, and addressing it in a way that the energy will respond to. I'm really careful not to direct the energy. I know that there's a lot of practitioners who will say, I'm calling in Archangel Michael, and I don't mean to, as I'm saying this, I don't mean to, upset anybody by what I'm about to state. But my experience is when you're directing the energy, we're putting a human component on an energy frequency that we're addressing. I don't think that we as humans, we may think we know a lot of things, but I think when we get out of the way and ask that we support our clients in a way that isn't beneficial to them, we're much more effective than assuming I know what this energy needs in order to move. So, for instance, I do not, and I've had an experience like this. I was working with somebody who called me and asked me to help with the remote clearing, and we were doing it on the phone together. So she was having challenging time clearing the energy, so she asked me to help. And as I'm helping, she's doing her thing, and I was like, okay, I was getting a clear message, and I asked her, what are you doing? She goes, well, I'm calling out on the angels, and I said, you know what, just stop for a second. Let me get a read on this, because there was some resistance. And the message that I got was that she was applying her belief system on the energy who did not have the same belief system. So when she's asking the angels to support in the transformation of this energy, it did not have the belief system in angels, so it was not going to respond in the way that she wanted. So by getting out of the way and allowing the energy to transform in a way that is in its highest good for the highest good of the client as well, I find much more effective. So that was the long answer. The short answer is I tune into the frequency because it's frequency-based. It doesn't matter where my clients are in the world. I can tune in and get information that I would have no way of knowing had I not been able to read that property.
So basically, you're like one of these old-fashioned multi-band radios that can tune into almost any frequency.
Yeah, kind of. Because my body, like I've had clients in Tel Aviv, Alabama.
Wow.
And my body can feel what's going on as well. Not only am I getting a visual, I'll get, and my visuals are more impressions, so I'll get an impression, I'll get a saying, and I feel what's going on in my body, and then, validate it with the client. But when I do my work, I'm really careful to only ask for the information that is going to serve my client. That's only the information that is provided to me. There's been cases where I haven't gotten any intuitive hits on it,
right?
But didn't mean that the energy didn't transform. Because I got a hit that it did transform, I do question and answer, so I'll ask how many of this, and I don't move forward until I get a confirmation that we move forward. The reason why I do that is because there's a lot of people who like the drama. And if I get an intuitive hit that is full of emotional triggered visuals or physical stuff that I'm picking up, and I share that with a client who is loves the drama and the story.
Right.
And that drama and story can recreate what they just paid me to clear. If that makes sense at all. Like they could be calling, oh yeah, I had Bridget do this thing, and they're sharing it with, great Aunt Betsy and the neighbor down the road and everything like that. Because your energy, you create where your energy goes, you create. So I'm really careful about what I share, and I trust that I'm only getting the information that is beneficial for the client to share.
What has been your most interesting case?
Oh, I've had lots of interesting cases. I had one case where it was actually interconnected to two different situations within a month of each other. Went to one client. I was called to go do a clearing on property where there had been some horrific events happen, and the people were being forced out of their residence onto property that they had because the city was expanding. And the property that they were building on had a really horrific past, and the lady was kind of nervous about moving onto the property based on the past. So, and I always ask clients, only give me the information that I need to know. Well, I always ask for, is it in my highest good to proceed? And I got a yes. But as I was preparing, I was getting physically ill before I was leaving the house. So I called her back and said, this is my 10-4, I kind of need more information. So she gave me just a little bit, which explained what I was physically picking up, which was my intuition saying, I needed to know to prepare myself a little bit more strongly, how can I say it? Prepare myself a little stronger for the situation I was going into because of the emotional impact of this space, because I'm so empathic. So I did that, so I didn't get sick on site. But it was interesting because she met me in town because it was like more of a rural area, and when I was following her out to the location, I hit a place on the road where I just started to cry. And I was in my car, she was in hers, and I was just started crying. I could hear, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, they're not going to find me, which was interesting because I didn't tell her until after, when we were doing the clearing on site, that I saw this young girl present, and she was thanking the client for doing the clearing. And she goes, well, that's interesting. That was the girl that was murdered down the road. So it was really interesting how my client had called me for her situation, yet her situation was helping this other person who had been murdered, like within 2-mile radius of her property. Go ahead.
That just, that is too uncanny. Here you are, not knowing what's going on, and yet bang, the client says, "Oh yeah, that's the girl that was murdered."
Yeah, because I usually do I do a personal clearing before I go on to any site. I do a pre-clearing to go on before I go on any site, which is why I got ill before I was going, which was my intuition just letting me know that there was more information I needed. And the counts, and I always do a count. And the count I got was different than the count the client gave me, which explained about this other trauma that was on my way. So my client, unbeknownst to her, really precipitated and brought healing to somebody who had lost their life within the area of what she was clearing, which also had to do with loss of life, and brought peace because this girl said thank you. And doing, in the space clearing, also doing a soul retrieval for the trauma that was left behind.
Do you find that this happens more than you would think it would? For example, you're helping one but helping another. Does this happen to you all the time?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go on to, so if I'm doing an on-site clearing, I may be in rural Saskatchewan, in a remote area, and of course, farmers are spread out. People don't know that I've been there, but I'll get a call. Maybe I'll go back in that same location with different people who have not had word of mouth, maybe 5-6 times. So the energy is shifting, which is creating more of a shift within the area and bringing healing to that area as well. So people may consciously be aware of it, that they need support, and then find me online. But whatever you do it's like dropping a pebble in the water. What you do for your own location is going to expand within your neighborhood, and is going to start transforming the environment around you at a greater capacity.
For the good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just like if you move into a location or a neighborhood that is not capped, what's going to happen, right? You have to work harder to raise that vibration.
Bridget, you and I have to take our final break for this hour. Exonation. Bridget Saraka is our special guest. Her website is www.feng-shui-by-Bridget.com, and Bridget and I will be back as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Send me your emails, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. And don't forget, starting March 21st, 3 p.m. until 7 p.m. Pacific, the X Zone will be on the Mutual Broadcast Network. I am Rob McConnell. Don't go away. You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Exonation. Bridget Saraka is my guest this hour. Her website is www.feng-shui-by-Bridget.com. And Bridget is a feng shui expert and intuitive practitioner specializing in on-site and distance space cleaning, personal clearing, and dowsing. And she currently resides in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, but originally from Thunder Bay, Ontario. Yay, Canada! Once again, her website is www.feng-shui-by-Bridget.com. First of all, Bridget, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's always a great pleasure talking to you. I love your energy. And I love what you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Likewise.
Bridget,
thank you for the invitation to share space with you.
Well, you're going to be back on with us in the future. I have no doubt about that.
Awesome.
Quick question for you, though.
Yeah.
There are lots of online programs teaching space cleaning and clearing out on the internet now. Not everything on the internet is good, because I still say the internet is the largest septic tank man ever made. So, what are your thoughts on these online courses, and do you give courses online?
Well, I don't give courses online, and mostly because of my belief system around online courses in regards to metaphysics. I am, if anything, outside of being a very metaphysical gal, I'm really highly opinionated about stuff like this. For me, I think it's good to have... I'm not a fan of, I just have to say it, I'm not a fan of online courses in regards to metaphysical metaphysical modalities, because they have to. For me, it's about having a really strong mentor, and it's energy, and it's about the experience, and it's through integrating the knowledge that we become more powerful in our gifts. I talk to a lot of people because of my position, and people reaching out to me, wanting me to train. There's more mediums and there's more metaphysical practitioners coming up, and they're kind of popping up like dandelions, and because they've taken an online course. And I don't think that you can get the experience and the knowledge that you need in order to be very beneficial to your clients. For me, it's about living it, taking your training with a really good mentor, integrating that knowledge within your beingness, living it, and then you become effective. But I think there's some kind of romanticism about, being a ghostbuster or being a medium or being any kind of healer, because there's this need and desire to be of service for the world. But in order to be of service, first heal thyself. That's not to say that as a human you're not going to have stuff happen to you. I mean, that's part of the evolutionary process. But have a very strong code of ethics first and foremost, and integrate that knowledge with a really reputable mentor before even stepping into this as a career.
But I did notice there was something very good on your website that our listeners would learn from, and that is your small TV series that you have on your site, filled with information.
You.
Listen, my dear, this hour has come and gone so fast. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and let our listeners know how they can contact you, Bridget, if they'd like to have you help them with their feng shui problems or their clearings.
Well, thank you. The best way to reach me is via phone. I always answer my phone and reply to everybody via in person. So area code 306-249-2064. And you can always check out my website or follow me on Facebook under Feng Shui by Bridget on Facebook. And my website is fengshuibybridget.com, or drop me an email at fengshuibybridget@gmail.com. But phone is the best place to get me.
Bridget, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and may you have a wonderful rest of the evening, and I look forward to the next time you and I talk here in the X Zone.
Have a wonderful evening and a fabulous week.
You too,
Thank
dear.
you.
Bye-bye now.
Thanks.
Once
Bye-bye.
again, X Zone Nation, Feng Shui by Bridget, www.fengshuibybridget.com. I'll be back on the other side of this news at the top of the hour as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.